The thud of her body hitting the rough wooden planks of Thornton's general store echoed through the mountain town of Platteville, Colorado. And Xerxes Whitmore had never moved faster in his 30 years of life. One moment he had been standing near the counter, ordering supplies for his cabin up in the Rockies, and the next, a young woman with hollow cheeks and threadbare clothing collapsed like a marionette with cut strings. Her basket of meager purchases scattered across the floor, a single apple rolling to stop at his worn leather boots. "Madam." The storekeeper, old Harold Thornton, rushed around the counter, but Xerxes was already kneeling beside her, his massive hands surprisingly gentle as he checked her breathing. She was alive, thank God, but her pulse felt weak beneath his calloused fingers. Up close, he could see the grayish pallor of her skin, the way her dress hung on a frame that spoke of too many missed meals. This was not just a simple fainting spell from the heat or tight corsets. This woman was starving. "Get some water," Xerxes commanded, his deep voice brooking no argument. Harold scrambled to obey while Xerxes carefully lifted the woman into his arms. She weighed almost nothing, and something fierce and protective surged through his chest. He had spent the last decade in these mountains, hunting, trapping, living a solitary life after the war had taken too much from him. But holding this fragile stranger, he felt something he had not experienced in years. Purpose. Her eyelids fluttered as Harold returned with the water. Xerxes supported her head, noting the auburn hair that had come loose from its pins, the delicate features that would be beautiful if not for the starvation etched into every line. "Easy now," he murmured as her eyes opened, revealing irises the color of honey. "You are safe." "I." Her voice came out as barely a whisper. "I am sorry. I did not mean to cause trouble." "No trouble, miss," Harold said nervously, hovering nearby. "Though I am afraid your coin purse did not have quite enough for those items you were trying to purchase." Xerxes saw the shame flood her features, turning the gray pallor into blotchy red. She tried to sit up, tried to pull away from him, but her body would not cooperate. "I thought I had enough. I counted carefully." "When did you last eat?" Xerxes asked bluntly. He was not a man for gentle words or dancing around truths. Life in the mountains had stripped away any pretense he might have once possessed. Those honey eyes met his, and he saw pride warring with desperation. "Yesterday morning. A small portion of cornmeal. Yesterday morning." It was now mid-afternoon the following day. Xerxes stood in one smooth motion, the woman still cradled against his chest as easily as if she were a child. "Harold, add a full meal from the hotel to my account, and whatever she was trying to buy." "Now see here, mister," the woman protested weakly, "I cannot accept charity from strangers. Name is Xerxes Whitmore. Now we are not strangers." He was already carrying her toward the door. "And it is not charity. Nobody in my presence goes hungry. That is just fact." Harold called after them about the abandoned purchases, but Xerxes would deal with that later. Right now, getting food into this woman was the only thing that mattered. The Platteville Hotel was just across the dusty Main Street, and he shouldered through the door with his burden, causing the handful of diners to look up in surprise. Xerxes Whitmore, Martha Campbell, the proprietor, wiped her hands on her apron as she approached. "What trouble have you found now?" "This lady needs food, Martha. Your best stew, bread, milk, whatever you have that will sit easy on an empty stomach." Martha took one look at the woman in his arms and her expression softened. She was a motherly sort who had run this establishment since her husband died in the mines 5 years back. "Bring her to the private dining room. I will fetch something immediately." The private dining room was really just a small alcove off the main restaurant, separated by a curtain, but it offered privacy. Xerxes set the woman carefully in one of the chairs, noting how she swayed even sitting down. He pulled another chair close and sat, his large frame making the furniture seem child-sized. "I am Ophelia Warren," she said quietly, her hands twisting in the fabric of her dress. "And I truly cannot repay you for this kindness. Did not ask you to." Xerxes studied her face, trying to piece together her story. She was young, probably early 20s, and despite the ravages of hunger, there was a refinement to her features and speech that suggested education. "You new to Platteville? I arrived 3 weeks ago on the stage from Denver. I was supposed to meet my uncle here. He wrote that he had a position for me, teaching at the school he was establishing." Her voice broke slightly. "But when I arrived, I learned he had died 2 months prior from pneumonia. No one knew I was coming. There was no school, no position, no uncle." The quiet devastation in those words hit Xerxes harder than he expected. He knew about loss, about finding yourself alone in a world that did not care whether you lived or died. "You have been here 3 weeks with no money and no prospects." "I sold most of my belongings to pay for a room at the boarding house, but that money ran out 4 days ago. Mrs. Henderson allowed me to stay in exchange for helping with laundry and cleaning, but she cannot afford to feed me as well. She has her own troubles." Ophelia's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I have been looking for any kind of work, but Platteville is small. There are not many opportunities, especially for a woman alone." Martha arrived with a tray laden with food. A thick beef stew rich with vegetables, fresh bread still warm from the oven, a glass of cold milk, and a slice of apple pie. The smell alone seemed to revive Ophelia somewhat, but Xerxes saw her hand tremble as she reached for the spoon. "Slow," he advised. "Your stomach needs to remember how to process food. Small bites." She nodded, and he watched as she carefully brought the first spoonful to her lips. The expression that crossed her face, pure relief and pleasure, made his chest tighten. Nobody should ever be that grateful for simple stew. She followed his advice, eating slowly despite what must be ravenous hunger, and he found himself respecting her self-control. Martha returned after a few minutes, ostensibly to check on them but really to assess the situation with sharp eyes. "The lady needs building up, Xerxes. One meal will not do it. I know." He had already been thinking about that. His cabin was a half-day's ride into the mountains, too far and too isolated to bring her, but he could not just walk away after this meal and hope for the best. "I will be in town for the next week or so. Got trading to do, supplies to arrange. I will make sure she eats proper during that time." "Mr. Whitmore." Ophelia set down her spoon, having made good progress on the stew. Color was already starting to return to her cheeks. "I appreciate your kindness more than I can express, but I cannot allow you to spend your money feeding me indefinitely. That would be improper and unsustainable." "What is improper is letting someone starve when I have the means to prevent it," Xerxes countered. "And I am not a poor man, Miss Warren. I live simple, but I have been trapping and hunting these mountains for 10 years. I have saved most of what I earned. Feeding you is not going to bankrupt me." Martha made an approving noise. "The man has a point, dear. And Lord knows Xerxes Whitmore is about the most honorable soul in these parts, despite his rough appearance. You would be safe accepting his help." Xerxes ran a hand through his dark hair, which fell past his shoulders. He knew he looked wild, with his full beard and buckskin clothing stretched over a frame built from years of physical labor. His arms were thick with muscle from wielding axes and hauling traps, his chest broad enough that he sometimes had trouble finding shirts that fit proper. But Martha was right about one thing. He would never harm a woman, especially one as vulnerable as Ophelia Warren. "Just let me help until you are strong again," he said, gentling his voice the way he would with a skittish deer. Then we can figure out what comes next. Maybe there is work to be found, or passage back to wherever you came from. Ophelia looked between him and Martha, and he could see the moment her pride lost the battle with her desperate circumstances. 1 week, she agreed quietly. And I will find some way to repay you, even if it takes me years. We can discuss that later. Right now, finish eating. She obeyed, and Xerxes found himself watching the way her throat moved as she swallowed, the gradual return of life to features that had been etched with exhaustion. When she finished the stew and half the bread, he could see she wanted more but was being cautious. Have the pie, he encouraged. You need to rebuild your strength. I feel almost dizzy from eating this much, she admitted. Is that normal? Your body is not used to it anymore. The dizziness will pass. He had seen this before, during the war. Prisoners who had been starved needed time to adjust to proper meals again. We will go slow, but consistent, 3 meals a day every day. The next week unfolded with a routine that surprised Xerxes with its comfort. Every morning, he would collect Ophelia from the boarding house and bring her to the hotel for breakfast. Martha seemed to take special pleasure in preparing hearty meals. Eggs, bacon, potatoes, biscuits with gravy. Ophelia would eat slowly, carefully, and Xerxes would nurse his coffee and tell her stories about the mountains. He found her easy to talk to, despite his years of solitude. She asked intelligent questions and listened with genuine interest as he described tracking elk through snow. The year he survived a grisly encounter with nothing but a knife, the hidden valley where wildflowers bloomed so thick in summer that the ground looked painted. In turn, she told him about growing up in Boston, her parents who had died from influenza when she was 16, the years she spent working as a governess to pay for her own education. I wanted to be a teacher so badly, she said one morning over scrambled eggs. Not a governess for wealthy families, but a real teacher in a school where I could help children who might not otherwise have opportunities. When my uncle wrote about establishing a school in Colorado, it seemed like a dream come true. That dream might still be possible, Xerxes said thoughtfully. Platteville is small, but there are mining camps in these hills that would benefit from having someone educated around. Families with children who need teaching. But who would hire a woman with no references, no credentials, who showed up destitute? Someone who values determination and intelligence over paperwork. He leaned back in his chair, studying her. After just 5 days of regular meals, the change in her was remarkable. The gray pallor had given way to healthy cream, her cheeks had filled out enough to show delicate bone structure, and her eyes had regained their brightness. She was, he realized with some alarm, quite beautiful. Give it time. Lunch was usually simpler, sandwiches or soup that Martha would pack up so they could eat by the creek that ran through town. Ophelia would sit on the grass, her skirts arranged around her, and Xerxes would stretch out nearby, ostensibly keeping watch but really just enjoying her company. She had a sharp wit that emerged more as her strength returned, and she made him laugh with observations about the town's characters. Did you see how Mrs. Henderson nearly swooned when that new banker smiled at her? Ophelia giggled, a sound that made Xerxes smile despite himself. She has been a widow for 20 years and acts like she has forgotten what a man looks like. Maybe she is ready to remember, Xerxes suggested. Nobody should be alone forever if they do not want to be. Something in his tone made Ophelia look at him sharply. Is that why you live up in the mountains by yourself? Because you want to be alone? He considered the question while chewing his sandwich. A month ago, he would have said yes without hesitation. But lately, heading back to his empty cabin felt less like returning home and more like returning to exile. I thought I did, The war made me not fit for civilized company for a while. Mountains are easier than people. What changed? Nothing. Everything. He met her eyes. Maybe I just got tired of my own company. Dinners were longer affairs, usually at the hotel where other diners provided a buffer against the intimacy that seemed to build between them. Xerxes would order large portions and smile with satisfaction, as Ophelia steadily worked her way through roast chicken or pork chops, potatoes and vegetables, always saving room for whatever pie or cake Martha offered for dessert. "You are trying to fatten me up like a Christmas goose," Ophelia teased on the sixth evening after finishing a substantial piece of cherry pie. "Just getting you healthy," Xerxes replied, but there was truth in her jest. He liked seeing her flourish under regular care. It satisfied something primitive in him, this ability to provide and protect. "You look much better than you did a week ago. I feel like a different person." She touched her cheek self-consciously. "Mrs. Henderson commented this morning that I had gotten my roses back. It suits you." The words came out rougher than he intended, weighted with meaning he had not planned to reveal. But watching her across the table, lit by lamplight and healthy again, he could not deny what had been growing in his chest all week. Somewhere between the first meal and now, between her grateful smiles and intelligent conversation, he had started to care for Ophelia Warren as more than just someone who needed help. The realization should have scared him. Probably would have, a month ago. But sitting there with her, it just felt right. "Xerxes," she said softly, and the way she spoke his unusual name sent warmth through him. "I have been thinking about what happens when this week ends." "Have you now?" He kept his voice neutral, not wanting to presume. "You said I should look for teaching positions in the mining camps. I asked around today, and there is a camp about 15 miles north that might be interested. The foreman's wife was in town, and she mentioned they have 7 children who need educating. He should be pleased." This was good news, a solution to her problems. Instead, he felt something cold settle in his stomach at the thought of her leaving. 15 miles north, that is rough country, I know, but it is an opportunity. She twisted her napkin in her hands. "The thing is, I would need to travel there to speak with them properly, and I have no horse, no supplies, no way to make that journey safely alone." "No, you certainly could not make that trip alone." The protective instinct roared to life. The trail to that mining camp wound through territory where mountain lions hunted and the terrain could turn treacherous. "I could take you. I was hoping you might offer." Her smile was tentative, hopeful, "though I know you must be eager to return to your cabin." "I have taken up so much of your time already." The truth was, his cabin could wait indefinitely. The traps were set for winter, not now in the late summer of 1876. He had come to Platteville for supplies and socialization after months alone, and he had found something far more valuable than either. "My schedule is flexible. We could leave day after tomorrow if you like. Give you another day to build up your strength." "Thank you." The gratitude in her voice was different now, less desperate and more genuine. "For everything. I know I said I would find a way to repay you, and I meant it." "Ophelia, I do not want repayment." He leaned forward, capturing her gaze with his. "I want you to understand something. What I have done this week, feeding you, spending time with you, that was not an investment expecting return. That was just human decency, and maybe something more." "Something more." Her breathing quickened slightly. "I have enjoyed your company. More than I have enjoyed anyone's company in a very long time. If there is repayment to be had, I have already received it in full just by getting to know you." Color flooded her cheeks, but not from illness this time. "I have enjoyed our time together as well, more than is probably proper for someone in my position to admit. Propriety is overrated." He reached across the table, offering his hand palm up, giving her the choice. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her smaller hand in his. Her skin was soft despite the work calluses she had earned at the boarding house, and her fingers fit perfectly against his rough palm. "I am a simple man, Ophelia. I live in the mountains, I hunt and trap. I do not have fancy words or civilized manners, but I know what I want when I see it." "And what do you want?" The question came out barely above a whisper. "I want to keep having breakfast with you, lunch by the creek, dinners where I get to watch you enjoy Martha's cooking. I want to show you the hidden valley I mentioned, want to teach you to track deer and identify edible plants. I want to hear more stories about Boston and your dreams of teaching." He squeezed her hand gently. "I want to court you proper if you would allow it." Tears sparkled in her eyes, but she was smiling. "I am a destitute woman with no family, no prospects until this possible teaching position, nothing to offer a man like you. You are intelligent, resilient, kind, and beautiful. You survived circumstances that would have broken weaker people. You maintained your dignity and your principles even when starving. That is everything to offer." He meant every word. In 1 week, Ophelia Warren had shown him more strength and grace than most people managed in a lifetime. "So what do you say? Will you let me court you?" "Yes." The word came out on a breath full of wonder and hope. "Yes, I would like that very much." They sat there holding hands across the table while other diners came and went, while Martha cleared dishes with a knowing smile, while the sun set outside and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Xerxes had lived through a brutal war, survived alone in harsh wilderness, faced dangers that would terrify most men. But nothing had ever felt as momentous as this quiet moment with Ophelia Warren agreeing to let him into her life. The next day, he used the time to prepare for their journey while still maintaining their meal schedule. Breakfast was particularly pleasant, with Ophelia animated and excited about the possibility of the teaching position. The foreman's wife, Mrs. Sullivan, she seemed genuinely interested when I mentioned my experience, Ophelia said, spreading jam on her toast. "She said the children are running wild without proper education, and she worries about their futures." "Mining camps are hard places," Xerxes acknowledged. "But the people who live there value things like education more than you might expect. They want better for their children than working underground." After breakfast, he took her with him to outfit her properly for the journey. At Thornton's general store, Harold greeted them warmly, clearly having heard about Xerxes's courtship from the town gossips. "Miss Warren," Harold beamed, "you are looking remarkably well, much improved from when we first met." "Thanks to Mr. Whitmore's generosity," Ophelia replied gracefully. Xerxes guided her through the store, selecting items she would need. Sturdy boots suitable for mountain terrain, a warm coat for cool evenings, a proper hat to shield her from the sun, riding gloves, and a divided skirt that would allow her to ride a horse more comfortably than her current dresses. "This is too much," Ophelia protested when she saw the growing pile of items. "This is practical," Xerxes corrected. "You cannot make a mountain journey in thin city shoes and summer dresses. Consider it an investment in your safety." When she still looked uncertain, he added more gently, "Let me take care of you, Ophelia. It gives me pleasure to provide these things." She touched the soft leather of the riding gloves, clearly moved. "No one has taken care of me since my parents died. I had forgotten what it felt like to have someone looking out for my welfare." "Get used to it," he said firmly, "because I plan to keep doing it for a long time." He also purchased supplies for the journey: dried meat, hardtack, coffee, a bedroll for Ophelia since his own camping gear was already at his cabin. While Harold tallied the purchases, Xerxes arranged to rent a gentle mare for Ophelia to ride. Lunch was another picnic by the creek, and Xerxes used the time to teach Ophelia some basics about wilderness travel. Always be aware of your surroundings, he instructed, pointing out tracks in the mud near the water. See those prints? Deer came through here early this morning, and those. He indicated different marks. Raccoon, probably last night. How can you tell when they were made? Ophelia leaned close to study the tracks, her shoulder pressing against his arm. Freshness of the impression, how much the edges have dried or crumbled, whether there is any moisture still in the bottom of the print. He enjoyed teaching her, enjoyed the way she listened with complete focus. Reading the wilderness is like reading a book, once you learn the language. Will you teach me more? About the mountains, the animals, all of it. Every day, if you want. The thought of having endless days to share his knowledge with her, to explore the wilderness together, filled him with an anticipation he had not felt in years. There is so much to show you, Ophelia. Things most people never see. I want to see it all. Her eyes shone with enthusiasm that had nothing to do with hunger now and everything to do with genuine excitement. In Boston, everything was so confined, so prescribed. Even as a governess, my world was limited to the households where I worked and the parks where I took the children. I have never had the freedom to just explore. Then we will explore together. He stood and offered his hand to help her up. But first, we need to get you that teaching position so you have income and independence. Then we can plan adventures. That evening's dinner had a different feeling to it, charged with the awareness that they would be leaving civilization behind tomorrow, even if only temporarily. Martha outdid herself with roast beef and all the accompaniments, and Xerxes noticed that Ophelia's appetite was now genuinely healthy rather than desperate. I cannot believe how much better I feel, Ophelia said, echoing his thoughts. A week ago, I could barely stand without getting dizzy. Now I feel strong enough to travel into the mountains. You have recovered remarkably well, but we will still take the journey slow, camp overnight rather than pushing through. No need to risk exhaustion. He had already planned their route to include a camping spot near a stream with good shelter and beautiful views, partly for practical reasons, partly because he wanted to share that particular place with her. I have never camped before, Ophelia admitted. Will I be safe with me? Always. The vow came from somewhere deep inside him, a fundamental truth. I would die before I let harm come to you. The intensity of his words made her breath catch. Xerxes, you barely know me. How can you make such promises? I know enough. I know you have integrity and courage. I know you face destitution without compromising your principles. I know you make me want to be better, do better, build something instead of just surviving alone in the wilderness. He reached across the table to take her hand again, a gesture that was becoming natural. I know that in 1 week you have become more important to me than anything else in my life. That is enough. I feel the same way, she confessed. It is terrifying and wonderful at the same time. I keep thinking I should be cautious, protect my heart, but I do not want to. I want to trust this feeling. Then trust it. Trust me. He lifted her hand to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles, feeling her tremble at the contact. I will not let you down. They left early the next morning, with half the town watching their departure. Xerxes had retrieved his horse, a sturdy gelding named Bear, from the livery and helped Ophelia onto the rented mare, a sweet-tempered animal called Daisy. Just relax and move with her rhythm, he instructed, adjusting her stirrups. Daisy knows these trails. She will take care of you. Martha had packed them enough food for several days, clearly hoping their journey might extend beyond the simple trip to the mining camp. Mrs. Henderson had provided Ophelia with a small bag containing her few possessions, and had wished them well with a knowing smile. The morning was crisp and clear as they rode out of Platteville, following the trail north into the mountains. Xerxes set an easy pace, frequently checking to make sure Ophelia was comfortable. She took to riding better than he expected, sitting straight in the saddle and showing no signs of fear even as the trail narrowed and climbed. "This is incredible," she breathed as they gained elevation and the vista opened up behind them. "I have never seen anything so beautiful." "Wait until we get higher. The views only get better." He pointed to a peak in the distance. "My cabin is on the far side of that mountain, hidden in a valley that stays green even in winter because of hot springs." "Hot springs. Like naturally heated water." "Exactly. The whole valley is warmer because of them. I have a pool right near my cabin where the water is perfect temperature for bathing year-round." He had not planned to mention that particular detail, but talking to Ophelia was so easy that words just flowed. "That sounds like paradise," she said wistfully. "A valley that stays green, heated pools, mountain views. You must love it there." I do," he corrected himself. "But it has been lonely. I did not realize how lonely until I had your company this past week." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, climbing higher into terrain where pine trees grew thick, and the air smelled of resin and wildflowers. Xerxes pointed out various plants, explaining which were edible, which had medicinal properties, which to avoid. "This is better than any classroom," Ophelia laughed after he finished explaining how to identify 3 different types of berries. "You should be a teacher yourself. I prefer an audience of 1. He caught her eye and was rewarded with a blush that had nothing to do with exertion. Around midday, they stopped to rest the horses and eat some of Martha's packed lunch. Xerxes had chosen a spot with a natural spring where they could refill their canteens and a flat rock perfect for sitting. "How much further to the mining camp?" Ophelia asked, biting into an apple. "About 4 more hours if we push it, but I would rather camp overnight and arrive fresh tomorrow morning. There is a spot ahead with good shelter and water. We can make an early camp, let you rest properly." "I am not that fragile," she protested, but he could see fatigue starting to show around her eyes. "You are still recovering whether you want to admit it or not, and there is no rush. The mining camp is not going anywhere." He finished his own lunch and stood, stretching muscles that barely noticed the hours in the saddle. "Besides, I want to show you the camping spot. It is special." Her curiosity piqued, Ophelia agreed, and they continued their journey. True to his word, about 2 hours later, Xerxes led them off the main trail onto a smaller path that wound through dense forest. The trees opened suddenly into a small clearing beside a rushing stream, with a natural rock overhang providing shelter and a fire ring showing that others had camped here before. "Oh," Ophelia breathed, taking in the scene. The clearing was carpeted with wildflowers, and the stream tumbled over rocks in a series of small waterfalls. The mountain rose dramatically behind them, and across the valley, other peaks marched into the distance under the late afternoon sun. "This is magical." "One of my favorite spots," Xerxes admitted, dismounting and moving to help Ophelia down. His hands spanned her waist easily, and he lifted her from the saddle as if she weighed nothing. For a moment he held her suspended, their faces level, and the world seemed to narrow to just the 2 of them. Her hands rested on his shoulders, and he could feel her rapid heartbeat through the contact points where their bodies touched. "Xerxes," she whispered, his name a question and an invitation. He lowered her slowly, letting her body slide against his until her feet touched the ground, but he did not release her. Could not release her. Not when she was looking at him with those honey-colored eyes full of trust and desire and something that might be love. "I want to kiss you," he said roughly, "but I need you to tell me it is all right. It is more than all right. Her hands moved from his shoulders to his face, her fingers threading through his beard to find his jaw. I want that too. He lowered his head and captured her lips with his, feeling her soft intake of breath as their mouths met. The kiss started gentle, almost tentative, but quickly deepened as Ophelia pressed closer and opened to him. She tasted like apples and sunshine and everything good he had ever known. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against his chest, and he felt her melt into him with a small sound of pleasure. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xerxes rested his forehead against hers. I have been wanting to do that since about day 3 of feeding you breakfast. Ophelia laughed breathlessly. I have been wanting you to do that since about day 2. We wasted time then. He kissed her again, shorter but no less sweet. I will have to make up for it. I certainly hope so. She was smiling when she pulled back. But perhaps we should set up camp before we get too distracted, practical and beautiful. I am a lucky man. He released her reluctantly and turned to the horses, who had already found good grass to crop near the stream. Setting up camp took on a domestic quality that surprised Xerxes with its rightness. He showed Ophelia how to properly secure the horses, how to arrange the bedrolls under the rock overhang for maximum comfort and protection, how to build a fire that would burn steady and clean. She followed his instructions carefully, asked intelligent questions, and proved herself a quick learner. I never had brothers or sisters, never went camping, never did any of this, she explained as she arranged stones around the fire pit. But I always wanted to learn. The families I worked for thought it was strange that I wanted to understand practical skills instead of just embroidery and piano. Nothing strange about wanting to be capable. Xerxes had the fire going now and was setting up his coffee pot on a flat stone near the flames. Those skills are what keep you alive out here. As evening fell and the temperature dropped, they sat close to the fire eating a simple meal of dried meat, cheese, and bread. The stars began to appear overhead, brighter and more numerous than anything visible from town, and Ophelia made small sounds of wonder. I have never seen so many stars, she marveled, leaning against Xerxes' shoulder. He had wrapped a blanket around both of them against the chill. It is like someone spilled diamonds across the sky. Out here, away from town lights, you can see the universe proper. He pointed out constellations, told her the stories his mother had taught him about the patterns in the stars. She listened raptly, her head resting in the hollow of his shoulder as if it had been made to fit there. Tell me about your family, she requested quietly. You never mentioned them. Not much to tell. Parents died when I was young, barely remember them. Was raised by my uncle, who taught me hunting and trapping. He died right before the war started. I enlisted because I had nothing else, no ties to hold me anywhere. The old pain had dulled over the years but never quite disappeared. War ended, I came west, found these mountains. That is the whole story. That is the facts, not the story. She lifted her head to look at him. What about your heart, your dreams, what you want from life? Nobody had ever asked him that before. Nobody had cared enough. He thought about it carefully, wanting to give her an honest answer. I wanted peace, quiet, a place where the only violence was the natural kind, predator and prey, not men killing each other over politics. I wanted to feel clean again after years of war and blood. Did you find it? Peace. I found quiet, found clean, but peace. He shook his head. That was missing until recently. Turns out you cannot be at peace when you are alone. You just exist day to day, surviving but not living. And now, her voice was barely audible over the crackling fire. Now I think I might have found all three. Quiet when I need it, clean wilderness, and peace in the form of a stubborn woman who would not accept charity even while starving. He cupped her face with one large hand. You woke something up in me, Ophelia. Something I thought died in the war. Hope, maybe. Or just the belief that I deserve happiness. You do deserve happiness. You are one of the best men I have ever met. She covered his hand with hers. And you have given me hope too. A week ago I was ready to give up. Not to harm myself, she clarified quickly, but to stop fighting so hard. To accept that maybe my life was just going to be struggle and disappointment. Then you appeared, this mountain man with gentle hands and a kind heart, and everything changed. They kissed again, slower this time, savoring the connection. When they finally settled down for sleep, Xerxes positioned his bedroll between Ophelia and the forest, an instinctive protective gesture. She noticed and smiled but said nothing, just reached across the small distance between them to take his hand. "Good night, Xerxes." "Good night, Ophelia." "Sleep well, you are safe." He meant it. Nothing would get past him to harm her. He dozed lightly, aware of every sound in the forest, every shift in the wind. Once, around midnight, something large moved through the trees nearby, probably an elk, and he lay tense and ready until it moved on. Ophelia slept through it all, her breathing deep and even, her hand still loosely clasped in his. Morning came with birdsong and sunlight filtering through the trees. Xerxes woke first and rekindled the fire, set coffee to brewing, and watched Ophelia sleep for a few stolen moments. She looked younger in sleep, peaceful, with her auburn hair spread across her bedroll and her features relaxed. Beautiful. She stirred when the coffee smell reached her, opening her eyes and smiling when she saw him watching. "Good morning." "Morning. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in months, maybe years." She sat up, pushing her hair back. "I felt safe. You were safe, are safe." He poured her coffee, added the sugar and cream she preferred from the supplies Martha had packed. "Breakfast is nothing fancy, just more of what we had last night." "I am learning that fancy does not matter. Good company makes any meal a feast." She accepted the coffee gratefully, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "Thank you for bringing me here, for sharing this place with me." They broke camp efficiently, working together in a rhythm that felt practiced despite their short acquaintance. The journey to the mining camp took about 3 hours, following trails that grew progressively rougher as they climbed. The camp itself was a collection of rough buildings scattered across a hillside where the mountain had been torn open for its riches. Men worked at various stations, hauling ore, operating equipment, moving with the purposeful efficiency of hard labor. A few looked up as Xerxes and Ophelia rode in, eyes lingering on Ophelia with the surprise that always met women in these masculine environments. "Help you?" A big man approached. His face seamed with dirt and his eyes wary. "Looking for the foreman. Sullivan, I believe." Xerxes kept his voice friendly but positioned his horse slightly ahead of Ophelia's. "This is Miss Ophelia Warren. Your wife met her in Platteville regarding teaching the children here." The man's expression cleared. "Ah, yes, Mary mentioned something about that. I am Jim Sullivan." He looked at Ophelia with more interest. "You are the teacher from Boston." "I am a teacher who trained in Boston," Ophelia corrected gently. "I would very much like to speak with you and your wife about establishing a school for the children here. Mary will be thrilled. We have been at our wits' end trying to manage 7 young ones with no structure or education. Come on up to the house." Sullivan gestured to a larger building at the edge of the camp. "You too, Mr. Xerxes Whitmore." They shook hands, and Xerxes felt himself being assessed with the directness of men who lived hard lives. Mary Sullivan was a tired-looking woman in her 40s who brightened considerably when she saw Ophelia. "Miss Warren, you actually came." "I was hoping you would after our talk, but one never knows. Mr. Whitmore was kind enough to escort me." Ophelia dismounted with Xerxes's help and approached Mary with a warm smile. I am very interested in the position if you are still looking for a teacher." What followed was a lengthy discussion about curriculum, living arrangements, salary, and expectations. Xerxes stayed quiet, letting Ophelia handle the negotiations herself, but he watched carefully to ensure the Sullivans treated her fairly. They did, offering a reasonable wage, a private room in one of the camp buildings, meals provided, and complete autonomy over the children's education. "When could you start?" Mary asked hopefully. "The children are running absolutely wild, and winter will be here before we know it. Better to have them settled into a routine before the snows come." Ophelia glanced at Xerxes, something unreadable in her expression. "Could I have a day or two to consider? This is a significant decision, and I want to ensure I am making the right choice." "Of course, dear. But please do not take too long. We truly need you here." Mary showed them around the camp, pointing out where the school would be held, introducing them to some of the other families. 7 children rapidly became 12 as word spread, ranging in age from 5 to 13, all desperately in need of structure and education. They left the mining camp in early afternoon, with Ophelia promising to send word within 3 days. Once they were back on the trail, Xerxes spoke carefully. "That seemed like a good opportunity. Fair wage, important work, everything you wanted." "It is a good opportunity," Ophelia agreed, but she did not sound happy about it. "But," he prompted. "But it is also isolated, difficult work, living in a rough environment with no real prospects beyond teaching these particular children." She was quiet for a moment. "And it would mean not seeing you very often, maybe at all if the winters are as harsh as you have described." His heart lifted at her words, even as he tried to remain practical. "Your career and independence are important, Ophelia. I would never ask you to sacrifice that for me." "You are not asking. I am choosing." She stopped Daisy and turned in the saddle to look at him directly. "Xerxes, I care about you, more than I have ever cared about anyone. This past week has shown me what life could be like with someone who sees me as an equal partner, who values my mind and my strength. The thought of accepting that teaching position and spending months barely seeing you makes me feel ill. But you need income, independence, security, all things the position would provide." Even as he said it, his mind was racing, trying to find solutions. What if there was another option? She looked almost nervous now. "What if I could teach children while also being close to you? Build a life that includes both." "What are you suggesting?" "You mentioned there are other mining camps in these mountains, families scattered around who might benefit from having a teacher nearby. What if instead of being tied to one camp, I established a traveling school, moving between locations, teaching where I am needed?" The words came faster as she warmed to her idea. "I could base myself somewhere central, somewhere with access to multiple camps." "Somewhere like my valley," Xerxes said slowly, beginning to understand. "Would that be too presumptuous? We have only known each other a week, and I am already suggesting living near you, building my life around yours." She looked down at her hands. "I know it is fast, probably crazy, but when I think about the future I want, you are in every vision, not as an occasional visitor but as a constant presence." Xerxes rode close enough to take her hand. "Ophelia, look at me." When she did, he continued, "I want that too. Have wanted it since about day 4, but was afraid to say it out loud and scare you off. The truth is, my cabin is big enough for 2. Hell, it is big enough for a family. I built it hoping that someday I might have people to share it with. I just never found anyone I wanted to share it with until now. Are you saying what I think you are saying? I am saying come live with me. Not just near me, but with me. Marry me, if you are willing to take on a rough mountain man who is better with animals than people. We can make your traveling school idea work." There are at least 4 mining camps within a reasonable distance of my valley. You could rotate between them, provide education, earn income, and still come home to me every night. Home, she repeated softly. I have not had a real home since my parents died. Just rooms in other people's houses, spaces I occupied but never truly belonged in. My valley, my cabin, everything I have would be yours. Our home, our life, built together. He squeezed her hand. I know it is fast. I know we are supposed to take time, court proper, follow all the social rules. But I also know what I feel and I know what I want. I want you, Ophelia Warren, as my wife, my partner, the person I share my life with. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling. Yes. Yes to all of it. To marrying you, to living in your valley, to building a life together. I thought I came to Colorado for a teaching position, but maybe I really came to find you. He pulled her from her saddle onto his lap on Bear, the big gelding shifting slightly under the additional weight, but standing steady. Then he kissed her thoroughly, pouring all his hope and love and promise into the contact. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms around his neck, her body pressed against his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xerxes laughed with pure joy. We should probably get you back to town so we can tell people and start making arrangements. What kind of arrangements? Ophelia settled against his chest, showing no inclination to return to her own horse. Marriage arrangements. I want this done proper. Talk to whatever passes for a minister in Platteville. Have a real ceremony. Let Martha plan a celebration. He stroked her hair, marveling that this incredible woman had agreed to be his. Then we outfit you completely for mountain living, get proper supplies, and I take you home to the valley. How long will all that take? Week, maybe 2 if we want to do everything right. He felt her tense slightly. What is wrong? Nothing is wrong. It is just 2 weeks of living in the boarding house, being proper and separated when all I want is to be with you. It seems like torture. She looked up at him. Could we not just get married quickly and handle the rest after? I do not need a big ceremony or celebration. I just need you. Are you sure? Women usually want the whole production. I am not most women. I am practical and I know what I want. You. A simple ceremony making us legally husband and wife. Then you take me to the valley and we start our life together. She cupped his face in her hands. Please, Xerxes, I have waited my whole life for something real. I do not want to wait any longer. How could he argue with that? All right. We ride back to Platteville today, find the minister tomorrow, get married as soon as he can perform the ceremony. Then we go home. Home, she repeated, and the joy in her voice made his chest tight. I cannot wait. They rode together on Bear, Ophelia side saddle across his lap while he ponied Daisy behind them. It was slower going, but neither cared, too wrapped up in planning their future to worry about speed. What is your cabin like? Ophelia asked. You have mentioned it but never described it in detail. It is solid, built to last. 2 rooms, though I have been thinking about adding more. A main room with the hearth, cooking area, my bed, a table and chairs. A second smaller room I use for storage but could be converted to something else. A bedroom, maybe, or a study where you could prepare lessons. He pictured it as he spoke, seeing it through her eyes. I have a root cellar dug into the hillside, stays cool year-round for food storage. A small barn for the horses. The hot springs I mentioned, just a 5-minute walk through the trees. It sounds perfect, cozy. She snuggled closer. Will it be strange having someone else there after so many years alone, strange in the best possible way? I am looking forward to it. To hearing another person moving around, cooking together, sharing meals, falling asleep beside someone I love. The words slipped out naturally and he felt her still. Love. She tilted her head to look at him. Love, he confirmed. I know it is fast to say it, but there it is. I love you, Ophelia. Have probably loved you since you took that first spoonful of stew and looked like you had been given a feast. Certainly loved you by the time you started making jokes about the town characters. Definitely loved you when you agreed to trust me despite having every reason to be cautious. I love you too. Her smile was radiant. I think I started falling for you when you called me stubborn while feeding me breakfast, or maybe when you told me stories about the mountains with such passion. Or possibly when you looked at me like I was precious instead of just another charity case. It does not matter when exactly. What matters is it is true. I love you, Xerxes Whitmore, and I cannot wait to be your wife. They made it back to Platteville just as the sun was setting, riding straight to the boarding house to collect Ophelia's things and inform Mrs. Henderson of the situation. The older woman took one look at their faces and started laughing. Well, I suppose this was inevitable. The way you two have been looking at each other all week, I am surprised you made it this long without declaring yourselves. We are getting married as soon as possible, Ophelia announced. Then Xerxes is taking me to his valley to live. Married? My goodness, you do not waste time. But Mrs. Henderson was smiling. Let me pack your things properly, and I insist on hosting a small dinner tomorrow night to celebrate before you go off into the wilderness. While Mrs. Henderson bustled around packing, Xerxes went to the hotel to arrange rooms for the night, keeping everything proper until after the ceremony. Martha nearly squealed with delight when he told her the news. I knew it. I told Harold just yesterday that you two were going to end up married. That man said I was being fanciful, but I knew. She hugged Xerxes hard enough to make him grunt. You bring that girl by tomorrow morning for breakfast, and I will make her a proper celebration meal, and I am baking the wedding cake. No arguments. The next morning, Xerxes found the minister, a circuit preacher who happened to be in town, and arranged for a ceremony the following afternoon. Then he took Ophelia to the general store and bought her a simple but pretty dress in soft blue that matched her eyes, along with everything else she might need for mountain living. You are spending too much money on me, Ophelia protested, though she clutched the new dress like treasure. I am spending money on my future wife, on our life together. That is an investment, not an expense. He added warm stockings, sturdy undergarments, a thick cloak for winter, and a beautiful wool shawl in cream that made her hair look like burnished copper. Word spread fast in a small town, and by the time they arrived at the hotel for breakfast, it seemed like everyone wanted to congratulate them. Ophelia handled the attention with grace, thanking people for their kind wishes while staying close to Xerxes' side. Mrs. Henderson's dinner that evening was a lovely affair, with several of the townspeople who had befriended Ophelia during her difficult weeks attending. There were toasts and laughter, advice for married life, and stories about Xerxes' reputation as a fair but formidable mountain man. He once fought off 3 men trying to cheat him on a trade, Harold Thornton recounted. Did not even draw a weapon, just used his fists and his wits. Those men left town and never came back. I prefer not to fight if I can help it, Xerxes said mildly. But I also do not let people take advantage. A good quality in a husband, Martha declared. Miss Ophelia, you have found yourself a good man. Treat him well. I intend to, Ophelia promised, her hand finding Xerxes's under the table. The wedding day dawned clear and beautiful, warm for late summer in the mountains. Xerxes dressed in his best clothes, which admittedly were not fancy but were clean and well maintained. He met Ophelia at the church, a small wooden building at the edge of town, and forgot how to breathe when he saw her. She wore the blue dress he had bought her, but Martha had added delicate white lace at the collar and cuffs. Her hair was pinned up with wildflowers woven through it, and she carried a simple bouquet of mountain blooms. She was, without question, the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "You look perfect," he managed to say. "So do you." She took his offered arm and they entered the church together. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. The minister spoke about commitment and partnership, about building a life together through good times and bad. When it came time for vows, Xerxes spoke from his heart. "Ophelia, I promise to protect you, provide for you, and cherish you every day of my life. I promise to support your dreams and build a home where you always feel safe and loved. I promise to be faithful, honest, and true from this day until my last breath." Ophelia's voice was steady despite her tears. "Xerxes, I promise to stand beside you as an equal partner, to bring joy and purpose to our life together. I promise to love you completely, support your endeavors, and make our house a true home. I promise to be faithful, devoted, and true from this day until my last breath. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." Xerxes cupped Ophelia's face gently and kissed her with all the love in his heart, aware of cheers from the assembled townspeople, but caring only about the woman in his arms, his wife. The word filled him with wonder and pride. They signed the legal documents, accepted congratulations from what seemed like the entire town, and then attended a reception that Martha had somehow organized overnight. There was cake and punch, music from a couple of miners who played fiddle and guitar, and dancing that continued until well after dark. Finally, as the moon rose high overhead, Xerxes and Ophelia slipped away to the hotel room he had rented. It was their wedding night, and suddenly Xerxes felt nervous in a way he had not experienced before. "You all right?" Ophelia asked, reading his expression. "I want to do this right, want to make this perfect for you." He closed the door behind them, sealing them into privacy. "It will be perfect because it is us." She stepped close and began unbuttoning his shirt. "I trust you completely, Xerxes. Show me what it means to be your wife." He kissed her deeply, pouring all his love and desire into the contact. His hands found the buttons of her dress, unfastening them with more patience than he thought himself capable of. When the fabric fell away, revealing her in just her shift, he could only stare. "You are so beautiful," he whispered. "I cannot believe you are mine. I am yours, and you are mine." She pulled his shirt free, her hands exploring the muscled expanse of his chest. "All yours forever." They came together with tenderness and passion, Xerxes taking great care to ensure her pleasure, Ophelia responding with a fervor that matched his own. It was sweet and intense and perfect, sealing their union in the most intimate way possible. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the narrow hotel bed, skin against skin, hearts beating in rhythm. "I love you," Ophelia murmured against his chest. "I love you too, my wife." He still could not quite believe it was real. "Tomorrow we go home to the valley. I cannot wait to see it, to start our real life together." They left Platteville 3 days later, giving themselves time to ensure they had all necessary supplies for mountain living. The townspeople sent them off with gifts: preserves from Martha, ammunition from Harold, a beautiful quilt from Mrs. Henderson. The journey to Xerxes's valley took 2 full days, as they were heavily laden with supplies, and he wanted to take his time showing Ophelia the route. They camped again at the clearing where he had first kissed her, making love under the stars with a freedom that came from being married. "This is the best adventure of my life," Ophelia said, wrapped in his arms as they watched the fire burn low. "Every moment just gets better." The valley revealed itself gradually as they crested the final ridge. Xerxes watched Ophelia's face as she took in the view. The lush meadow that stayed green even as fall approached, the stream that wound through the center, the thick forest surrounding it all, and the hot springs sending up gentle wisps of steam. "It is paradise," she breathed. Xerxes, it is actually paradise. His cabin sat at the edge of the meadow, backed against the mountain for protection. He had built it himself over the course of 2 summers, using timber from the valley and stone from the stream. It was solid and weatherproof, with a wide porch where he liked to sit in the evenings. "Home," he said simply, helping her dismount. "Our home now." He carried her over the threshold as tradition demanded, delighting in her laughter. Inside, the cabin was dimmer but cozy, with afternoon light streaming through the windows. Ophelia looked around with obvious pleasure, taking in the large stone hearth, the sturdy furniture he had built himself, the neatly organized living space. "I can already see where I will add touches," she said. "Curtains for the windows, rugs for the floor, maybe some shelves for books. We will need a proper desk for me to prepare lessons. We will build whatever you need." He set her down and pulled her close. "This is your home to shape as much as mine." They spent the rest of the day unloading supplies and settling in. Xerxes showed Ophelia the root cellar, the barn where the horses would stay, the chicken coop he had built but never filled. "Thought we might get some chickens," he suggested. "Fresh eggs would be nice." "I always wanted chickens," Ophelia agreed, "and maybe a milk cow. I can learn to make butter and cheese. Whatever you want, we will make it happen." That evening he took her to the hot springs. The pool was naturally formed in a rocky depression, about 10 feet across and deep enough to sit comfortably. Steam rose from the surface, and the setting sun turned everything golden. "This is incredible," Ophelia marveled, dipping her hand in the water. "The perfect temperature. Good for sore muscles after a long day. Good for bathing year-round. Good for relaxing." He began stripping off his clothes unselfconsciously. "Coming in," she blushed but followed his example, and soon they were both immersed in the warm water, sitting close on the smooth rocks. The intimacy of it, being naked together in nature with the valley spread around them, felt deeply right. "I could stay here forever," Ophelia sighed, leaning against his chest. "We have forever, or as close to it as humans get." He wrapped his arms around her. "This is our life now." Simple, quiet, but full of everything that matters. The autumn passed in a blur of activity and happiness. Xerxes taught Ophelia how to hunt and fish, how to preserve food for winter, how to read the weather and the animal signs. She proved an excellent student, fearless and determined. Together they made trips to the nearby mining camps, where Ophelia introduced herself as a traveling teacher and arranged a schedule. "I will spend 2 days a week at each camp," she explained to the families. "That gives me time to travel between locations and still have time at home to prepare lessons. The cost is minimal, just enough to cover materials." The response was enthusiastic. Within a month, she had 15 students spread across 4 camps, ranging in age from 6 to 14. She taught reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, and history, adapting her lessons to each child's level. "I love it," she told Xerxes after her first full rotation through the camps. "The children are so eager to learn, so grateful for the opportunity. And coming home to you at the end of each day makes it perfect." Winter arrived with heavy snows that blanketed the valley and made travel difficult. Ophelia's teaching schedule slowed but did not stop entirely, with Xerxes accompanying her on the journeys to ensure her safety. The long evenings in the cabin were cozy, filled with reading, conversation, and the deep contentment of being together. "I have never been happier," Ophelia said one night as they sat before the fire. "Never felt more complete." "Neither have I." Xerxes pulled her onto his lap, marveling as he always did at how perfectly she fit there. "You took a lonely mountain man and gave him everything. Spring brought new life to the valley and a new kind of joy." Ophelia realized she was pregnant one morning in April, and Xerxes's reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, laughing with delight, then immediately became protective. "You need to rest more, eat better, maybe stop traveling to the camps for a while." "I am pregnant, not fragile," she protested, though she was smiling. "Women have been having babies while working for thousands of years. I will be fine." He compromised by accompanying her on every trip and reducing her schedule slightly. The families at the mining camps were thrilled by the news, the women offering advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Their son was born in December during a gentle snowfall. Xerxes delivered the baby himself with guidance from the midwife book Ophelia had insisted they buy, his hands steady despite his fear. When he held his son for the first time, feeling that tiny weight in his arms, he wept. "He is perfect," Ophelia said weakly from the bed. "What should we name him?" "You choose. You did all the hard work." "No, together. We do everything together." She smiled at him. "What about Thomas, after my father, Thomas Whitmore? I like it." He carefully placed the baby in her arms and kissed them both. "My family, my entire world." Thomas was a healthy, happy baby who thrived in the valley. As he grew, Xerxes delighted in teaching him about the wilderness, carrying him on hikes while Ophelia worked, showing him tracks and plants and all the wonders of their mountain home. 2 years later, a daughter joined them, born in spring when the valley was full of wildflowers. They named her Rose, and she had her mother's auburn hair and honey eyes. Then came another son, James, and another daughter, Lily. Their cabin expanded to accommodate the growing family, with Xerxes adding rooms and Ophelia filling them with love and laughter. Ophelia continued teaching, now with her own children among her students. The traveling school became an institution in the region, known for its quality education and the dedicated teacher who had built it from nothing. "You ever regret it?" Xerxes asked one evening as they sat on the porch watching their 4 children play in the meadow. "The life you could have had in the city, the career teaching at a proper school?" "Never. Not for 1 second." Ophelia took his hand. "This life, this family, this is everything I ever wanted, more than I dared dream when I was starving in that general store. Best day of my life when you fainted and I got to feed you back to health." He kissed her temple, "Gave me purpose, gave me you." "We saved each other," she said softly. "I was starving for more than just food. I was starving for connection, for purpose, for love. You gave me all of that." Their children grew strong and healthy, raised on fresh air and mountain water. Thomas developed his father's skill with tracking and hunting. Rose inherited her mother's love of teaching and books. James was the adventurer, always exploring new parts of the valley. Lily was the nurturer, collecting injured animals and tending them back to health. As the years passed, the valley became more than just their home. It became a refuge for others who needed help. A young widow found work helping Ophelia with teaching. A former soldier, broken by war like Xerxes had been, found healing in the quiet wilderness. Families from the mining camps would visit during hard times, always welcomed and fed. "You have built something special here," Martha told them during one of her rare visits years later. She was old now, retired from the hotel but still sharp. "A place of hope and healing. That is quite a legacy." "Our legacy is our children and the lives we have touched," Ophelia said, watching her now grown sons help Xerxes repair the barn. "Everything else is just details." On their 20th wedding anniversary, Xerxes surprised Ophelia with a trip back to Platteville. The town had grown considerably, with new buildings and businesses, but the hotel still stood and was still run by Martha's daughter. "Remember when we first met?" Xerxes asked, standing outside what had been Thornton's general store, now a much larger establishment. "You fainted right about here." I remember thinking you were the biggest man I had ever seen, terrifying and gentle at the same time. Ophelia leaned against him. I remember your hands, so careful checking my pulse, your voice so commanding when you demanded water, the way you looked at me like I mattered. You did matter. You do matter. You are everything. He tilted her chin up and kissed her, not caring who saw. 20 years, 4 children, countless adventures, and I love you more today than I did then. That is because we have built our love every single day, brick by brick, moment by moment, choice by choice. She smiled up at him. And I will keep choosing you, keep loving you, for however many years we have left. They returned to the valley to find their children had organized a celebration. Thomas and his new wife had prepared a feast. Rose had made a cake. James and Lily had decorated the cabin with wildflowers and ribbons. To Ma and Pa, Thomas raised his glass. Who showed us what real love looks like, what commitment and partnership mean, what family is supposed to be. To Ma and Pa, the others echoed. That night, after the celebration ended and the children dispersed to their own homes and rooms, Xerxes and Ophelia sat on their porch watching the stars. You ever think about that first week? Ophelia asked. When you fed me every meal until I got my color back. I think about it often. Think about how close I came to not being in that store at that exact moment. How different both our lives would be if I had not seen you fall. He shuddered at the thought. I almost stayed at my cabin that week instead of coming to town. Fate, Ophelia said firmly. It was fate that brought us together. You needed someone to care for, to bring you back to life. I needed someone to care for me, to show me I was worth something. We were 2 broken pieces that fit together perfectly. Not broken anymore, Xerxes corrected. Healed, complete, happy. So happy, she agreed. Happier than I knew was possible. Years continued to pass, bringing grandchildren and great-grandchildren. The valley remained a place of peace and plenty, carefully stewarded by the Whitmore family. Ophelia's traveling school evolved into a permanent school building, funded by donations from the mining camps and staffed by Rose and her children. Xerxes and Ophelia grew old together, their love deepening with each passing season. He still hunted, though less strenuously. She still taught, though now just private tutoring for grandchildren. They still bathed in the hot springs together, still sat on their porch watching the sunset, still held hands like newlyweds. I have had a good life, Xerxes said one evening when they were both well into their 70s. Better than I deserved. You deserved every bit of happiness you received, Ophelia countered. You are a good man, Xerxes Whitmore, the best man I have ever known. Only because you made me better. You and our family, this life we built. That is what made me into someone worthy of happiness. On their 50th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren gathered in the valley for a massive celebration. 3 generations of Whitmores filled the meadow with laughter and love, all of them thriving because 2 people had chosen to build a life together. Tell us the story again, one of the youngest grandchildren begged, about how Grandma and Grandpa met. Ophelia and Xerxes exchanged glances, then together told the story they had told countless times, about a starving young woman and a lonely mountain man. About fainting in a general store and being fed back to health. About kindness and courage and love that grew from the simplest of beginnings. And the moral of the story, Xerxes concluded, pulling Ophelia close, is that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them. When you are willing to help someone in need, when you take a chance on love even though it seems impossible, and when you trust that caring for someone else might actually be caring for yourself, Ophelia added. Because we saved each other. I needed physical nourishment and Xerxes gave me food. But he needed emotional nourishment, and I gave him purpose and love. We fed each other in different ways until we were both whole. The celebration continued long into the night, but eventually, the elderly couple retired to their cabin, to the bedroom they had shared for 50 years. They lay in bed together, Ophelia's head on Xerxes's chest, his arms around her. "No regrets?" he asked, as he had asked so many times over the years. "Not a single one," she replied, as she always did. "You gave me everything, Xerxes. A home, a family, a purpose, a love that sustained me through every challenge. What more could anyone ask for? I was going to say the same thing about you." He kissed the top of her head. "Sleep well, my love, my wife, my Ophelia. Sleep well, my protector, my provider, my Xerxes." They drifted off together, surrounded by 50 years of memories, secure in the knowledge that they had built something lasting and true. A love that had started with a simple act of kindness, feeding a starving stranger, and had grown into a legacy that would last for generations. The valley continued to thrive under their children's stewardship. Thomas took over the hunting and trapping business, expanding it into a sustainable operation that provided for many families. Rose's school became renowned throughout Colorado, attracting students from as far as Denver. James explored the mountains and discovered new trails and resources that benefited the whole region. Lily established a hospital in Platteville, bringing modern medicine to the frontier. But it all traced back to that moment in the general store, to Xerxes Whitmore seeing Ophelia Warren faint from hunger and deciding to help. That single act of compassion had rippled outward, creating waves of positive change that touched hundreds of lives. Xerxes lived to 83, active and engaged until the very end. He passed peacefully one autumn morning, surrounded by family with Ophelia holding his hand. "I will miss you every day," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But I will be grateful for every moment we had together. You gave me a beautiful life." Ophelia lived another 5 years, staying active in her grandchildren's education, offering wisdom and love to all who sought it. When her time came, she went peacefully in her sleep, a smile on her face as if greeting someone beloved. Her children found a letter on her bedside table, written in her still elegant hand despite her age. "My dearest family," it read. "I have lived a life beyond my wildest dreams, all because a mountain man with a kind heart saw me faint from hunger and decided to help. He fed me every meal until my color returned, and in doing so, he gave me back my life. We built something beautiful together, this family, this legacy, this enduring love. Remember always that kindness matters, that helping others helps ourselves. That love, real love, is the foundation of everything worthwhile. I go now to be with your father, but I leave you with all my love and the certainty that the Whitmore legacy will continue for generations to come. Take care of each other, take care of this valley, and never forget that the greatest wealth is not in gold or property but in the bonds of family and the love we share. With all my heart, your mother, Ophelia Whitmore." The letter was framed and hung in the main room of the cabin, which became a family museum preserving the story of Xerxes and Ophelia. Generations of Whitmores grew up hearing about their remarkable ancestors, about the power of compassion and the beauty of true partnership. The valley remained in family hands, carefully preserved as both a working homestead and a memorial to the love that had created it. The hot springs where Xerxes and Ophelia had spent so many peaceful evenings became a place of healing and reflection. The cabin, expanded and maintained, stood as a testament to what could be built with love and dedication. And in Platteville, now a thriving town, there was a statue in the main square. It showed a large man helping a woman to her feet, his expression protective and gentle, hers grateful and trusting. The plaque read, "Xerxes and Ophelia Whitmore. He fed her when she was starving, She gave him purpose when he was lost. Together they built a legacy of love and service that continues to this day. May we all be so blessed to find our perfect partner and so committed to helping those in need. The statue became a gathering place for weddings, with couples believing that starting their marriage there, in the shadow of such enduring love, would bless their own unions. The Whitmore family attended every ceremony, sharing stories of their ancestors and offering encouragement to new couples starting their journeys. The mining camps that Ophelia had taught in all established schools of their own, named in her honor. The Ophelia Warren Whitmore Academy became the most prestigious educational institution in Colorado, educating thousands of children who might otherwise have had no opportunities. And every year, on the anniversary of that day in the general store when everything changed, the Whitmore family would gather in the valley. They would share a meal together, tell the stories again, and raise glasses in honor of Xerxes and Ophelia. To the mountain man who saw someone in need and acted, the toast would go. To the woman who had the courage to accept help and the strength to build a new life, to the love that sustained them through 50 years of marriage, to the family they created and the legacy they left behind. May we be worthy of their example. May we show the same kindness to those in need. May we love as deeply and commit as fully. To Xerxes and Ophelia Whitmore. To Xerxes and Ophelia. Everyone would echo, their voices carrying across the valley that two people had turned into paradise through love and hard work. And if you visited that valley on quiet evenings, when the sun set behind the mountains and the hot springs sent up gentle steam, you might almost hear the whisper of two voices, still together even in eternity, still sharing the love that had begun with a simple act of feeding a stranger until her color returned. Still building their legacy, one generation at a time, proving that the greatest love stories are not found in fairy tales but in the everyday choices to care for each other, to build together, to commit fully to the partnership that makes two people stronger than they ever were alone. Their story was proof that sometimes the most profound transformations come from the simplest acts of human kindness, that feeding someone's body can also nourish their soul, and that the love built on a foundation of genuine caring and mutual respect can last not just a lifetime but for generations beyond. Xerxes and Ophelia Whitmore had found each other at their lowest points and lifted each other to heights neither could have reached alone, creating in the process not just a marriage but a legacy of love that would endure as long as the mountains themselves stood watch over the valley they had made their home.